We're talking to Peter Hitchens. I don't know whether you saw, Peter, there's a bit of a video going around from Manchester where two police officers are attempting to arrest somebody for not wearing a mask in a shop, which it appears is not actually something they can do. But this is the kind of confusion that's been caused by these kind of rather ludicrous measures that the government's introduced.
No, I haven't seen that. And this issue often leads to unpleasant confrontations between authority and individuals. It's one of the many things that's wrong with the policy, but I haven't seen that.
Yeah. But what do you make of what they did on Saturday, which is basically to initially more or less make anyone who's trying to go anywhere make it impossible for them to do so, or exceedingly expensive? I mean, we spoke to Simon Calder this morning, who just got back from Florida. He didn't know that he was going to have to isolate and get himself a test, which was due to be delivered in 48 hours. He's still waiting. 48 hours has passed. We know somebody here at the office who's waiting 6 days later for a T2 test to be given as a result, and they have to self-isolate. Now they're asking us to take a test before we come back, having been proved negative, to take another test when you get back to say you're still negative, and until then you can't go out.
Well, I love some of the people who impose these rules to explain exactly what good they do. But what's fascinated me over the past week is the readiness of people who are in favour of closing down society to rush to extreme measures as soon as they possibly can without any evidence. Now, my side, I was constantly told, you're not experts, you don't know anything, you're not scientists. And I say, well, of course I'm not a scientist. And I listen to those who are. And the whole point about science is that it needs data to decide what the truth is. Now, it's quite clear that the data which we have on the new variant is very slender. Yeah. And this is repeatedly stated by people who are in favour of these events. And the other day, The Guardian had a front page headline, something more or less on the lines of experts say, don't wait for data, act now. Well, if they're experts, surely their job is to wait for data.
Well, that's right.
The man who popularised the scientific method most in this country was the fictional detective Sherlock Holmes, who was based on a very clever doctor who deduced illness from careful study and experimentation. And he always used to say in the Sherlock Holmes stories that to theorise without data was a capital error, which it is. You can't have it both ways. You can't jeer at people like me and say we're not experts, which I don't claim to be. And then when expertise is needed, not even wait for it to be deployed to decide what to do. Either our policy is driven by expertise and careful thought and an understanding of the situation, or it is not. If it is, then surely we must wait for data before acting, unless there's some obvious, tremendous emergency, which there just does not seem to be in terms of the figures of deaths and hospital admissions, which are as near as you can get in the statistics on COVID to anything like hard information. There's still some distance away from it, in my view.
But this is the peril, it seems to me, of listening to experts, scientific or otherwise, who seek to predict things and who say, well, you must do this in order to stop something from happening. And you and I started our argument many moons ago because I said the only reason for the lockdown was to stop the overwhelming of the NHS, to which you said, yeah, but you'll never know whether that would have happened or not, because it didn't happen, and you don't know whether by doing whatever it was that they did, that was what stopped it.
Quite right. And of course we now do know from the example of Sweden in particular, that not taking the steps which we took did not have the catastrophic results which were threatened by the various prophets and crystal ball readers who got the ear of the government in that.
Right. But we're now told, though, that the reason that Boris is acting now is that he was criticised for not acting fast enough the last time. And so we're literally doing government policy for the future by looking at what happened in the past.
Oh, well, of course. I mean, you can understand that, can't you? It's a lot of bad acts by government, completely understandable. If it all did go wrong, he'd be blamed for it and he'd possibly have to resign. So you can see why he would. But it seems to me to be the job of people in power who spend their entire lives seeking the highest responsibilities in the land, to have a bit more guts than that.
Yes. And it also seems to me that people are beginning to ask the question, you know, if he's going to wait until the 20th of December to do the next kind of statement publicly, whatever that is going to be, it's literally 3 days before Christmas, effectively. And people are asking me the question, what gives him the right to determine what sort of Christmas we can all have?
Well, I'm sorry to say that two things give him that right. One is that people voted for his party and put him in office. And the other is that when his government began in the spring of 2020 to impose authoritarian measures unjustified by the circumstances, very few people spoke up against it. So he has enormously increased the power which he was actually given by law in the first place. And there's no point complaining about it now. This is what people licensed when they sat and let it happen in the spring of 2020. There should have been more criticism. We're supposed to have a civil society. We're supposed to have public opinion. We're supposed to have independent media. We're supposed to have a parliamentary opposition. We're supposed to have independent MPs who can speak out. None of these things actually perform the task for which we rely on them. And so we are now living in a society where we have almost no power over him. So that's where he gets the right from. He has it.
And he's not going to give it up, is he?
Count yourself lucky. He's not that ghastly man who's Prime Minister of Victoria in Australia.
Right.
It could be even worse.
Yeah. Well, that's tragically the truth. It could be worse because it is a lot worse in an awful lot of other places. However, how do we get out of it then?
I don't think we ever will. I think that we will live with some level of this sort of interference in our lives the rest of our days, because this is when freedom dies, it dies. You can't. It won't. It's not like it's a perennial plant that dies in the winter and comes up again in the spring. If you don't look after it, if you don't tend it and preserve it from the many threats to it, it won't come back again. And there is no spirit in this country of freedom. If Magna Carta were abolished tonight because of COVID, if people say, well, Magna Carta is a real threat to COVID, we have to strike it off the statute book, I should think there'd be very, very little in the way of protest, or the Bill of Rights. Those who have heard of them, who are now a minority, probably wouldn't do much about it. And I would shout and scream and stamp my little feet, but what difference would that make? As we know, zero. So get used to it. This is what you licensed. This is what you asked for, and now you're getting it. So,
well, now you've thoroughly depressed me. I mean, you made me laugh last.
Ask me to sympathise.
You made me laugh last week. Now you've just upset me.
To make me laugh now. I mean, it is quite funny. Here we are, the great arsenal of freedom, the country which has been shouting about how it saved the world from tyranny all those years ago. And the slightest puff of wind from an authoritarian government, we all lie down and bang our foreheads on the ground, saying, "Hail to thee, great leader." I've never seen anything so pathetic in my life, but we did it, and here we are. We have to live with it. I should be dead soon, so it's not a big problem for me. But so that's why I can laugh about it more. All the poor guys are going to be around for decades and decades of it. I'm sorry for you. But,
I know. Well, I feel bad for my kids. Actually, is the main thing. But Peter, listen. Great to talk to you as ever. Peter Hitchens, Melon Sunday columnist, of course, a soothsayer, a man who speaks the truth, a man who also predicted all of this, I have to say, even in the days when I was disagreeing with him.